I have an amazing lady on the show today. Her name is Christy Whitman. She's a New York Times bestseller, and she's appeared on the Today Show, the Morning Show, TEDx, Hallmark Channel. She teaches the law of attraction, energy mastery, and personal development, as well as meditations and private sessions with her clients, really to align ourselves with that power that can be within ourselves truly. So anyway, you're going to find a fascinating discussion, and I hope you'll join us and enjoy it.
At the end of the day, it's not about what you have or even what you've accomplished. It's about what you've done with those accomplishments. It's about who you've lifted up, who you've made better. It's about what you've given back. Denzel Washington. Welcome to Inspire Vision. Our sole purpose is to elevate the lives of others and to inspire you to do the same.
Hey, Christy, how are you doing?
I'm great, Dr. Doug. How are you?
Good. Hey, thanks for being on the show. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored.
So I would love for you to share with the audience your journey.
Well, my journey, I was born and raised in Scottsdale, Arizona, and I had a formula for what I thought was going to make me happy. And I realized early on in life, thank goodness, I was about 24 years old, when I looked at my life and said, wait a minute, I've accomplished everything I set out to. I graduated from college. I have a career. I'm making money. I'm engaged to be married. I've got the man, the money, the career, my health and wellness in my body. And I'm not happy. I'm more depressed than I've ever been. I thought all of these things would make me happy. And it was one of those moments where it's like, was I lied to? What's the deal? So I started searching, and I really felt a hunger to learn more about what is this thing called life. I mean, there's got to be more to this. And what this really led me to breaking off with my fiance and meeting someone in California and moving from Chicago to California. And before I broke up with him, this latest, I always dated bad boys. He introduced me to one person who happened to be a hairdresser, and I needed to go get my hair cut. And her name was Janine. And the whole time she was cutting my hair, I was just noticing she had a very, very different, didn't have this language at the time, had a very, very different energy. And finally, at one point, I just said, okay, what do you do? And she said, I meditate. Now, this is over 25 years ago. So we didn't have the internet as we do now. Nobody I ever knew meditated. So in my mind, the paradigm that I had for someone that meditated was some guru guy in a white robe, white beard, white hair, sitting on a mountain oming, right? And that was who meditated, right? So when here's this like hip, beautiful young woman that's a hairdresser living in San Ramon, California, tells me that she meditates, it just completely shifted the paradigm. And so I wanted to know more. What do you mean you meditate? And so she said, well, I can introduce you to my meditation teacher. And she gave me her phone number. And Dr. Doug, if you remember those cell phones years ago, how big they were, right?
Oh,
I was dialing on the brick as I was leaving the salon and leaving a message for Melanie, because I wanted, it was like that movie, Harry Met Sally, when they're in the restaurant and she said, the lady says, I'll have what she's having. I wanted what Janine had, because she had a sense of joy about her that I didn't know yet. And so I met Melanie. I went to her house, and as I walked in, she had very clinky new age music and incense and candles and statues of angels. And I thought, what am I doing in here? And she invited me to sit down on a cushion, not on a chair or a couch, and she just looked deep into my soul. And she said to me, you create your own reality. And that was the first time I'd ever heard that, but something in me just opened up. And I was like, yes, I know. I knew that. But then my mind kicked in and said, how? And so she started with thoughts. She said, well, you're creating things by by your thoughts. Either you're attracting things to you or repelling things from you based on the way you think. Now, this was another huge moment for me. Based on the way I think, because I didn't know at this point in my life that I wasn't my thoughts, or that my thoughts weren't true or real. And so she said, having that awareness, and she could see where I was at, personally and in my development, spiritual development, she said to me, go home for a week. All I want you to do is pay attention to your thoughts. And so I started paying attention for the first time in my life to my thoughts. And I couldn't believe how negative I was, how critical, how judgmental, not only of myself, but of others, of God. I was in a boxing ring with God, telling God I could do it better. And it was really eye-opening. And it was around that time that I started to meditate, and I started to learn about universal laws and learning about energy. And through that time, I just became, feverishly wanting to learn from anybody I could. Again, it wasn't the internet as we have it now. So I had to go to seminars, and I had to go and read books, and there wasn't online stuff happening. And so I just devoured everything that I could to learn about law of attraction, to learn about the universal laws that I now teach and talk about. And about 5 years in to changing my life, I met and married a really nice guy for the first time ever, had my ideal body, money in the bank, had a great career as a pharmaceutical rep. Things were going really well. I had a house, and all of a sudden I had my first book called Perfect Pictures that came through me in the middle of the night. At 1:05, I was woken up with this voice, and I was listening to the voice. I couldn't turn it off. And the information that it was telling me was really relevant to what I was going through. So I got up just to kind of write some stuff down. And for hours, my hand became not my own and just scribed and scribed and scribed. And this happened 7 nights in a row.
Wow.
So, yeah. So, yeah. So I decided to contact one of the teachers that I saw at a church, Reading Church of Religious Science. And her name is Terry Cole Whitaker. She was a minister, New Thought minister. And I asked her, I think I'm writing a book. How do you get a book, published? And so she said, go online and look for a literary agent. And I literally typed in Google literary agent. And the first man that popped up, he had a publishing / literary agent company. And I sent him what I had. He accepted it, and I got my first book published. And after my friends and family bought it, who definitely were not the target audience for this book,
No.
everybody thought I had lost my mind. I started speaking in spiritual bookstores and churches, and new thought churches. And people would ask me in my seminars. I sometimes would have 2 people, sometimes I'd have 6 people, but every person would ask me, "Can you coach me?" And back then, again, I was like, coach you? I mean, I would think of like a coach as like a cheerleading coach or a football coach,
Right.
Right. So I would say to them, no, just call me on the phone and I'll take you through the process. I'll help you shift from one vibration to another. And they did. And then they were calling me back or emailing me with these amazing success stories. And I just loved the process of it. And I didn't have a lot of passion for what I was doing. I was a pharmaceutical rep, but I was making great money. I was having great success, but I knew that it wasn't something I had passion and purpose for. But when I was coaching, when I was assisting, that's when I came alive. That's when I really felt like this is something I really want to do. So about 15 years ago, I went full time. I was coaching, before that, as I would work as a pharmaceutical rep and then a sales training manager. I'd work at nights and weekends until I quit my corporate job and went full time into my own coaching business. And I haven't looked back.
Good for you. Good for you. Well, and you've discovered some really interesting things, and I sit here and laugh. I'm trying to write a book. I wish I would hear the voices coming in, and so I could just start writing or typing or whatever the way I do it. But, it's fascinating how sometimes just things happen that really change our lives.
Yeah.
So what is your latest book? Because you've written a few, right?
Yeah, I have seven now. So my latest book is called The Desire Factor. It was actually channeled by the council. I call them the Quantum Council of Light. So this book had different stages of development, but then in 2018, happened to be on my son's birthday, September 17th, 2018, I started channeling. They came through me. My consciousness went out and their consciousness came through. And everything pivoted. My business pivoted from me coaching to now channeling and doing healing work with people. And this latest book called The Desire Factor is really a manifestation of that channeling. And it's really about understanding that all of us have desires, whether they're small desires or big desires, but most of us have been programmed that desires are bad, that
Right.
desires lead to suffering, and that, we shouldn't go towards our desires because that's selfish. And really, desires, whether it's to write a book or to become a coach or start a family or eat lunch, all of these come from a higher place within us. And when we allow ourselves to feel the expansion of that desire, then we feel good. But if we suppress those desires, we feel bad. And it's usually someone talking themselves out of the desire that they have, because I'm too old, I'm too young, I'm not good enough, someone else did it, who am I to? All of those beliefs or those limitations, those desires are a way for us to release those limitations and become more of who we really are. So the council laid out in the desire factor these 7 principles, which most people have heard of some of these principles, but the thing is, it's like a puzzle, right? If you put a puzzle piece in the wrong place, the puzzle doesn't make sense. And that's what they did, is that they made it so that it's all energy setting up, which then pops into a manifestation. And that's where a lot of times people get frustrated with law of attraction, is that why I'm doing what I'm told to do, or I'm doing what I think I'm supposed to do, but it's not working for me. And then they're like, something's wrong with me. They take it personally. And then that just continues to add to more of the limitations.
Well, and let's talk about the law of attraction, because I've interviewed different people. We've talked about that. In fact, I can't remember who it was, but they had something to do with the original. And it was fascinating, because ultimately, when they were talking about, they said, what we've discovered is there's got to be a little bit of action. You just can't sit back and look at your board and say, all right, this is my dream home, or this is my dream life, or whatever, and then just sit back and have it happen. What have been your experiences relative to that? And how does someone take this sense, and probably there's much deeper stuff we need to talk about before we get to that, but just since we're talking about it, what are your senses of, quote, the law of attraction from a perspective of how do people really achieve that? And what are the things, as you said, there's a lot of people that are not experiencing that, even though they're trying really hard. What are the blocks? What are the barriers?
So yeah, there's a lot to unpack in that. So if you look at the desire factor and the 7 principles, it's like taking the law of attraction and expanding it into an accordion and understanding each of the different elements that go into law of attraction. And the very last one is action. You have to take action. We are a physical counterpart to the non-physical. And we are here. I mean, the divine can't send an email. The divine can't write a book. It can inspire me, but ultimately me and my physical, nature, I have to be willing to type it up. I have to be willing to put myself out there. So we do have to take action. And law of attraction is something that's not like it works for one person or another person, or doesn't work for another person. It's universal. It's a universal law. And to understand it better is to understand that we now know everything is energy, right? Whether it's modern science or quantum physics, we know that everything is energy. But we also have to understand where we play in that energetic connection. We are energy receivers. Most people are receiving in energy from the 3D environment, from other people that are in fear. So they're picking up on fear, they're picking up on worry. They're not connecting to a higher vibration, to joy, abundance, success, which is our natural way of being. So we are energy receivers. A lot of people block, what they receive. They're only willing to receive so much because they have limitations of, oh, I'm not deserving, I'm not good enough, I'm not important, I'm not significant. All those are silly little decisions that we make because when we're younger, we have very limited access to, more of our divine wisdom. And so we see something and we see mom's not paying attention to me because maybe she's cooking dinner and I'm trying to get her attention, I'm trying to get her focus and she's not giving it to me. I then make the connection that, oh, well, I must not be important. I must not be enough. And as a kid, things are so black and white, right? And that's what starts the limitation. Oh, daddy came home and he didn't pay attention to me, or, daddy gives attention to my sister and not me. We make these decisions that feel very real to us, but we're making a decision from a very limited perspective. And those limitations, they create what we call beliefs. And those beliefs create our reality.
Well,
So
and it's interesting. I was talking to a friend the other day, and you talk about, you talk about law of attraction. Are you familiar with the emotional scale
yes,
that
yeah,
Abraham Hicks,
yes,
and I was talking to a friend about that because, you talk about people who come in and they're fearful and they're angry and they're upset. And I don't know that we all understand how intuitive and empathic some of us are, because we don't even understand what that means.
right,
But the reality is that they start to pull us down.
yes.
And all of a sudden we find ourselves in that anger. We find ourselves in that frustration. And as I was talking to my friend, it was like, how on earth do we move from that lower level up into the joy and the love and the adventure and the happiness and the freedom and the joy and all of those types of things? And I think it is not easy for a lot of people to figure out how to do that. But I guess the question that I have is, how deeply affected are people by the people that they surround themselves with?
Well, we're deeply affected by people when we don't know how to master or manage our own energy. So if for example, I know that I'm going to be around my mom and my dad, who my mom, God bless them. My mom's 85, my dad's turning 90 in May. They're very stuck in their ways, and they're very much, they raised me. And here I was from really what my work has been is understanding that there's a difference between a lack mentality and an abundance mentality. A lack mentality is where separation, drama, struggle, chaos, victim consciousness comes from. It always feels bad. And on the other side of the spectrum is abundance. And that's where the divine lives. That's where the divine vibration is. And it's like the Abraham Hicks emotional scale. It's like all of those lower level emotions are on the lack side. All the other higher vibrations are on the abundance side. And there's a tipping point between lack and abundance and that satisfaction. That's coming into a place of positive aspects, gratitude, appreciation for what is, getting excited, dreaming about, feeling your way into what you do want. Most people don't know that. So they just keep feeling the exact same way. They don't know how to process their emotions. They don't know that they can tap into an energy field that is beyond this 3D world. They can connect and ask for the feelings of abundance to cultivate in their lives. And that's really a process of going from a lower vibration to a higher vibration. But we got to get that within ourselves first, because if we're in fear and we get with others that are in fear, it just exasperates the fear. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
Yeah. And what I find is the biggest challenge is the awareness.
Yes.
How on earth does, as people are listening to this right now and they're going, okay, well, my life's pretty good. How on earth, because if we're looking at it from a third party perspective, it's like, you know what, your life sucks and you don't even realize it. And that may be judgmental, but oftentimes it's not. How does people suddenly become aware that, you know what, my life is not what I want, number one, and number two, what I really deserve?
Well, that's the thing, is most people look at their life and they know that there's some level of discontent somewhere. It could be in their relationship they're in, it could be with their finances, it could be in their career, it could be within their own physical body, but they've learned to settle. They've learned to just deal with it, or they've learned to suppress those emotions. I mean, we have more and more people that are drinking, that are smoking, that are shopping, they're gambling, they're doing everything besides feeling themselves and being aware of their own energetic connection. If you feel off and you go think that a cigarette or a cup of coffee or a sugary donut or a joint or a glass of wine is going to make you feel better, it's like we're already out of alignment, and those things take us further out of alignment. They get us temporary relief, but once we are done with the nicotine in the body or the alcohol, we come back to that set point. And we're aware, people are aware that they have some kind of discontent, but they're just not willing to look at it. Because what happens is, if they look at, well, that's how I don't want to feel, and that's what I don't want, I want to feel this. I want to feel better. I want to have this instead. They don't feel empowered, nor do they know how to change their situations. So sometimes awareness for someone could be really scary, because if they don't know how to get from one place to the other, that feels really disempowering too. I'm aware that I don't want to be in this marriage anymore. I'm aware that my body is not feeling healthy. I'm aware that I'm tired of living paycheck to paycheck. But what am I going to do about it? It's like there's a powerlessness because they feel resourceless in what to do. And that's where the desire factor helps people align energetically and allows yourself to give permission to yourself to start dreaming again, to start hearing your desires and following the energy of those desires. And, really being able to understand that it's a desire happens so we can become more of who we really are. So if someone is stuck, like you said, it's like, it's their awareness. Yeah, I'm stuck, but I can't do anything about it. So we go into a victim role or powerlessness, which is one of the lowest vibrations in the universe.
So as you talk about that, what are the points in the book? How many points?
So there's 7 steps or 7 principles, and they all build on each other. And the first one is alignment. So
Okay.
alignment meaning, okay, I want this thing. I would love to have this thing, right? Or this, I'd like to go on that trip. I'd like to have a partner. I'd like to have a baby. I'd like to create it, whatever the desire is. And to align our consciousness with it. What is our consciousness? It's what we say, it's what we think, it's what we believe or perceive, what we feel, and what actions we take. Everything else in the universe is outside of our consciousness, except for those things. Because we could see something and perceive it, we could see something and talk about it, but how we respond to that stimulus or that person or whatever is going on, that's within our control of our unconsciousness, because light is light, and light is going to come through the channel. It's kind of like, when you go to a movie theater, there's the projector and then there's the movie, right? Light is going to light up that projector, which will then light up the movie onto that screen of our lives. But it's our consciousness, which is the movie. So if we don't like the horror movie that we're seeing, we can take out the film and put in a romantic comedy or something that's inspiring instead. The light doesn't change, but it has to filter through our consciousness, and we are the ones that have free will and choice as to what we say, what we think, what we feel, what we believe, and how we act from our physical body, because that's the transmission of energy. I said before, we are energy receivers, we're also energy containers, and then we're also transmitters. We transmit from those 5 points of consciousness.
Well, and what's interesting scientifically, the energy we put out, there's an opposite and equal reaction of coming back in. And so from a standpoint of the law of attraction, I'm just curious, is when we put out negative energy, do we end up attracting people and situations that just reaffirm that negative energy?
Yes, because we're in a vibratory universe. So if we're sending out something negative, that's going to come back. It's like a wave, it comes back. And,
so,
go ahead.
Yeah, so that's step 1. Step 2.
Yeah, so that's alignment. And then the second thing is really what we're also see, it all kind of flows into each other. There's alignment with, yes, I want this. I want to feel this way. Now, the second principle is the principle of focus. We all have free will and choice of where we're focusing our minds. And our minds are incredibly creative. I mean, we can create the worst nightmare and hell on earth through our minds, or we can create heaven on earth through what we think about, what we spend time dreaming about, what we spend time imagining and visualizing. We have this mental capacity that when we shift to focus on what we want and why we want it and how we want to feel, it's very creative. But most people are not aware that they're focusing on what they're worried about, what they don't want. For years as a coach, I would say to someone, okay, so what is it that you do want? Well, I don't want to lose my marriage. Okay, that's what you don't want. What do you want? Well, I don't want to be late. Oh, I don't want to gain weight. That's not what you want. What's the opposite of what you've been focused on? Because you know what you don't want. What's the opposite? Well, I want my marriage to be more connected. I want to be more in love like we did in the beginning. Now it's like, now you start shifting your focus, you shift everything. So that's number 2. The third one, which is even more important is joyful expectancy, the principle of joyful expectancy, because most people, if they align and they focus on what they want, now they might have an expectation from the past, right? Well, I'd like this, but that's not going to happen. I'm expecting to be disappointed because I've been disappointed in the past. I'm expecting that someone's going to, betray me, or I'm expecting that I'm not going to be supported. So they're not joyfully expecting a new outcome. They're living by what to expect based on their past limitations. And that's a huge shift.
Oh, yeah, big time.
And then the fourth principle is the principle of having. This is one of the biggest ones. We were just talking about this because everything is in vibration. When someone wants whatever they want, doesn't matter what it is, usually they're coming from an awareness that they don't have it. I want the partner because I don't have it. I want more money because I'm tired of not having enough. I want to have better health because my body's in pain. We're aware of what we don't want, which is great, right? Be aware of what you don't want, but then flip it and understand that if we stay in the vibration of lack, of not having it, then we can't attract it, because we attract what we vibrate first. Most people think, oh, if I get the form, then I'll feel. And it's such a lie. How many times have we got the form, but that was empty. I thought I would feel successful or happy or joyful. And you asked me where my story started. That's what I bumped up against. Wait a minute. I accomplished all these things. Even when I became one of my books, I had 2 books at the New York Times. The first time it happened, for years, I've been visualizing that. I've been feeling my way into that. And when that happened, when I became a New York Times bestselling author, I don't know if I thought a parade was going to go through my house or bags of money were going to fall on my head. I don't know what I expected, but it was a feeling of, that didn't do it. That didn't do it. That didn't finally fill me up the way I thought it would. And because we're assigning all of our stuff, we are meaning makers, and we sign when I finally have this amount of money, then I'll feel. When I finally find that partner, then I'll get. And it's not true. We create all the forms, relationships, situations, experiences, circumstances from the energy that we give out. So if we're wanting the fulfillment of something, we need to feel what it feels like to have it, whether it's a certain level of increase in income, or the love of our lives, or a new house, or the career that we want. How would we feel before we get it? Because now we're vibrating at that level, and the forms, the people, the situations, we're now attracting that to us. So having is important.
Oh, no, go ahead. Finish your sentence.
Yeah, I was going to say having is essential to the manifestation process, where most people, I had a client one time say to me, I know what he looks like. I've been dreaming and visualizing about him, and I know all the things that we're going to do together. Where is he? And it was like her energy was on impatience. Her energy was on the lack of him. He wasn't here yet. And she, in her mind, kept taking her energy field kept taking her to the absence of it, not the having of it. So the vibration that we match is what we're going to get.
Well, and it's interesting what comes to my mind. And you talk about the council and that energy and that light and so forth. There are many people who are very religious in different ways and have those beliefs. But one of the things that really strikes me, when you talk about Jesus, for those who are Christian, he makes a comment that I don't know many people make, and I've actually used that and asked the question in a Sunday school class. Did he do what he did to become, or did he do what he did because he was? And he made the comment, I am.
Yes.
That I am.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting as you talk about that literally our actions, our expectations, everything that occurs is really based on who we are. And if we're focusing, as you say, on the negativity and all of that, that's what we attract, that's what we experience. And even if we're experiencing something positive, that negativity can destroy that.
Absolutely. I am are the 2 most important words that we say. Words have power. And when we say I am, and then what comes next, I am lazy, I am tired, I am bored, I am frustrated, or I am powerful, I am free, I am important, I am loved. It changes our state of being. It changes what we attract. It changes what we give out into the world. It changes our whole entire emotional connection. I mean,
Oh, yeah. And, it's to have that joyous expectation, I think is so cool. So what's the next step?
so after you have the feeling of whatever it is that you want, then the next one is love. So the principle of loving, because when you love, that's the highest vibration. So you might have the feeling of being abundant, right? And you feel abundant, then you want to like even increase it even more by loving having the feeling of abundance, loving the feeling of success, loving the feeling of joy. My earpiece keeps falling out. So having is one thing, and then you take it to the next level by really intensifying it by loving it. Like, I'm just loving being abundant. I'm loving having the love of my life. I'm loving being successful. That makes your energy field even more powerful.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there. How many different definitions of love are there in the Greek language?
Well, there's
4
a
to 5?
lot, there's a lot in the 3D world, but vibrationally, from a divine perspective, it's just pure positive energy.
Okay.
It's an expanded feeling.
So there's a difference between loving your experience and work, or loving your children, or loving your spouse or your partner, or it seems like there is a different level of love when you're talking about that, or I love my car, or I love my truck, or I love this, or I love that. So help me to understand that a little bit more.
So it's not a conditional love that we're talking about here. It's just a pure positive energy flow that feels expansive. And that's what we're talking about. It's where it's beyond appreciation and gratitude. A lot of times it's beyond words. That feeling when you fell in love, it's like, it's expansive. There's no, if you do this, then I will love you. And there's no, I'm going to hold back love or restrict love. It's just pure open-hearted. It's just a pure flow of energy coming through you that feels good. That feels
it's pure love.
Pure love. Yeah. It's not conditional.
All right. So when you're loving these things, then what's the next step?
Next is to surrender, because at some point when you're doing all this work, there might be limited parts of us, whether it's in our mind and our emotions and our perspectives, in our consciousness. And there might even be that point of, wow, okay, I'm loving this, but I don't know how to do that. Right. So it's understanding that this whole book, The Desire Factor, is understanding that we are co-creating with the divine. And there's things that we need to do to be able to be in receiving mode and action mode. So alignment and momentum, but also when do we turn it over to the divine? Right. And when we have negative thoughts, it's that process of surrendering those thoughts over so that we can clear ourselves to then receive in a higher vibration, a higher thought. Like we were saying about the I am. If you're saying, oh, I'm so tired, it's like, wait, I'm surrendering that thought. I am energized. It changes your state of being. I used to say to myself all the time, I'm exhausted. I'm so tired. And then I would need to, and this is a long time ago, go smoke a cigarette, or go drink more coffee, or go get some candy, or do something that I'm grabbing for something outside of myself to make myself not be exhausted. And that was short-lived, because soon I would need another cup of coffee, or I would need another cigarette. I'd need something else. And as soon as I started shifting that language, saying, I am energized, I am full of vitality, I didn't need these other things, because in my mind and in my state, I was fulfilled. So anytime we have a thought, a perspective, a belief that doesn't feel good, I had a moment, this is a few months ago, where I was looking forward to doing something. I was actually on my way driving about a half an hour from my house. And at the last minute, it got canceled. So I was sad, and I allowed myself to feel the feelings of sadness. I felt angry because I already was on my way, and why'd this person wait so long? And, so I felt the anger, and then the disappointment came up, and I wouldn't let myself feel that. And I could hear the counsel say, pull over, because I was driving. And they're, why are you not willing to feel the disappointment? And the reason, I don't know. The reason is because for years, my mother would say to me, now don't be disappointed if you don't get it. And all of a sudden, like a movie in my consciousness, when I was between my years of 7th and 8th grade, I so wanted to belong to some kind of club. So I tried out for track. I hate running. I tried out for tennis. I tried out for cheerleading. I tried out for basketball. I'm like 5'1". I mean, I tried out for everything, softball, just to be part of a club. And every time I would leave the house, my mom would say to me, now don't be disappointed if you don't get it. And then when I would come home and I didn't get it, she'd say, well, life is full of disappointments. So I had this weird relationship with this whole concept of just the emotion of disappointment. And so months ago, here I am, I'm hearing my mom say that to me in my head. That's why I'm so resistant, because I was always told, don't feel disappointment, right? And life's full of it. So don't feel what life is full of. And I went, wait a minute. I don't want to have my consciousness say to me that life is full of disappointments. What is life full of? Life is full of surprise and delights. And that felt so much better. It was like releasing all of that old energy. It was like, wow, life is exciting. It's full of surprise and delights. And I don't have to be afraid to not feel the disappointment. Sometimes it's an emotion. It takes 90 seconds to actually process an emotion. And once I stopped and let myself feel the disappointment, I was back in joy.
You know, and that's interesting how we can literally control that. And, you know, I have this saying that I can't tell you where I got it from. It's not mine original, but, you know, that which we resist persists.
Yes.
And so when we keep focusing on those things that we don't want to be disappointed, and we don't want that, and we don't want that, that's exactly what's going to happen.
Exactly. So that's what we need to surrender, because surrendering is an essential part of manifesting. Surrendering, hey, what I think I need to do, or surrendering what my best thinking is. The divine has a bird's eye view on our lives. It has a more expanded view. And so sometimes we have to surrender our own limitations to be open to the abundance, to the higher perspective. So surrender allows us to be open. And that's when then we can receive. And then the divine, God, universe, whatever you want to call it, will then tell us, will show us what is the next step. And that's where we need to take action, because that's the 7th principle. Action is essential. And action isn't always an outer action. Sometimes it might mean, like I did in the car, stopping and feeling my emotions and letting myself release that emotion of disappointment, releasing and surrendering the old way of thinking that life is full of disappointments, and bringing in, I was taking mental action. I'm still taking, when I go to meditate, I take an action to go meditate and call in light. I'm still taking an action. It's an interaction. And sometimes it's a call someone, do an interview, write a book, you know, go pick up your kids from school, go research this. And those are the actions that we need to take to keep the energy moving forward, because without action, I mean, it's physics, you know?
Well, yeah. And the fact that you let go, that's the interesting thing to me, is so many times we allow those negative emotions to continually affect us. How do people let it go? How do people just surrender and say, you know what? Okay, I'm feeling depressed. That's okay.
Yeah.
Then how do they get out of that?
Well, depression and anxiety are actually not emotions. They are both a suppression of emotions that's underneath it. So for example, if I'm depressed, that's not an emotion. It's a disease state. So sadness is under depression. And if we don't allow ourselves to feel sad, most people, we've been trained by, you know, people that loved us. Oh, if you cry, I'll give you something to cry about. What do you got to be sad about? I used to hear my mom say that to my sister all the time, who was depressed, who had bipolar, who ended up committing suicide. She would say to my sister, stop crying. You have nothing. You have everything. Well, telling someone to stop feeling doesn't help them. They're still feeling an emotion. So she became more and more depressed. And what did she do? She did more and more drugs and everything else too. Ate everything in sight, drank everything in sight. So we have to be able to be present with ourselves and say, I'm feeling sad. And letting ourselves be aware that in this moment, I'm feeling irritable. I'm feeling angry. I'm feeling frustrated. I'm feeling disappointment. And letting ourselves move into our emotional body. Our emotional body is actually a lower part of our body. It's our gut. When we first feel an emotion, it hits us there and then whooshes all over our body. So if we just take time to sit and feel the energy pulsation that is in our body already, and it starts to actually release. I mean, this is what I do. We have courses with the council called Quantum Energy Mastery. So
Right.
there are processes and tools where you're feeling, but when you really feel the pulsation of an emotion and you're allowing yourself to accept and being present with your emotion, not suppressing it, not trying to deny it, when you're processing it, then once that's gone, you can bring in the energy and start feeling compassion for yourself, you know?
Well, and you bring up an interesting point. I want to investigate it a little bit further. We have a little bit more time. You talk about depression, and that's just a state. And it really isn't the emotion that you're feeling. It's a hidden emotion. And you mentioned sadness, anxiety. That's a state. What's the emotion behind anxiety?
So interesting with anxiety. Anxiety is an over amplification of an emotion that hasn't been expressed. So fear and worry are a lot of times the culprit emotions that then lead into anxiety. Because if you've got fear and you're pushing it down and you're pushing it down, or you're constantly worried, it's going to come out as anxiety. So when you understand that anxiety is not it's a diagnosable, it's a diagnostic, thing that the doctor says, oh, you have anxiety, here's some pills. Oh, you have depression, here's some pills. They're not actually emotions. What's underneath the anxiety is either the worry, the fear. A lot of times those are the two ones. And that when you can actually feel your fear and let the fear go, that's when the anxiety goes away.
So when you talk about, for instance, release blocks and let go of fears and traumas holding you back, and that's one of the things that your counsel does.
Yes.
How do I get rid of my fears? How do I get rid of those traumas in my past life that have just totally affected me?
So here's what happens when we're going along, right? And all of a sudden we could be feeling a really good emotion, and boom, we get what I like to call bushwhacked. The rug gets pulled out from underneath us. We get news of something, someone calls us something, or says something mean to us, or we hear of a betrayal. What happens a lot of times, and it's counterintuitive, it's much like a turtle. When it gets scared, it goes into its shell. Instead of feeling the emotions, feeling the anger, feeling that sadness, feeling all the emotions that come with it, and letting ourselves literally receive in the communication and release it, having a different decision. Do I want to trust this person again? Do I need to go through the stages of grief for this? How do I need to process this to take care of myself? Most people clam down around an emotion. And a lot of times what gets bushwhacked is a positive emotion. I'm feeling joy, I'm feeling excited, this happens, and then boom, it's like we close our hearts down. And when we do that, we feel scared, we feel worried, whatever it is, but it's kind of like a caged lion. These are energy imprints. And when it closes down, energy doesn't just dissipate. It constantly is moving. It cannot be destroyed. It cannot be created. It just is. So when we close down around it, it's like a caged lion. And what it does is it creates its own vortex. It now is, for example, I was betrayed by a friend when I was a sophomore in high school, stole my boyfriend, right? So that kind of situation, closed down around it. I made a decision. I'm not going to have any super, girlfriends anymore. Like, girlfriends can't be trusted. So now that spirals, that creates a belief. And now I attract more women or situations where I either avoid having girlfriends, or if I do, more betrayal gets connected to that, because we're creating from our vibration and what gets stuck in us, right? Men can't be trusted. Money's hard to come by. I'm not enough. All of these imprints are creating and literally attracting. Nothing is asserted to us in our universe. It's all attraction based on our own energy, because divine, the light, the love moves through us, but it can only go through a consciousness that's open and receiving.
So is it just a matter of being aware and then releasing it and just saying, okay, those are emotions that I'm feeling. I'm just going to let it go. Because my joyous expectation is something entirely different.
Yes, but understand that if you have an 8-year-old that's clamped down, it's bringing that 8-year-old or that 12-year-old or that however old you are, and letting that part feel the emotion that it wasn't willing to feel. Because once you open up the heart, you open up your energy field, and that little one in you, or that adult, younger adult or adolescent, when they finally feel and process the emotion, that's part one. Part two is then allowing yourself to feel compassion. Most of us don't know how to be compassionate because we haven't learned how to be compassionate with ourselves. Because there are things, we could have a most amazing life, but this is a 3D experience where there are spectrums of experiences. And even if we have the most perfect life, we all know at some point or another that people that we love are going to pass, whether it's an animal that we love or another human being. That experience of losing someone or having someone transition doesn't feel good. So we have a full, we're all humans. We all know what fear feels like. We all know what doubt feels like, because there's a whole spectrum of emotions. And so when we're not feeling those and letting them go, we get stuck in those places where we weren't willing to feel it. So a lot of times, once you release the emotions of it, then the neutralizer is that energy of compassion. Compassion is very different than feeling sorry for ourselves. A lot of time we're in self-pity. We feel sorry for ourselves. We're in that, drama, if you will, feeling like a victim. But compassion is a neutralizer. Compassion is that place where we're starting to feel love for ourselves enough to say, I know this is hard. Sometimes it's not easy being a human. This wasn't a fun experience to go through. It's like giving yourself a big energetic hug, being soothed and nurtured, doing that for ourselves. And then after we've neutralized ourselves from the old energy, then we get to choose. Then we get to bring in the energy that we do want.
Cool. You know what? We're running out of time. I'm told by my radio show people, only 50 minutes, that's it, max. So we're getting there. We could go on forever and ever. We've just barely touched things.
Right.
So, but here's what I'd love you to do. Number one, talk about, again, your latest book. And then number two, what is the message you'd like to leave with the audience today?
Perfect. So The Desire Factor is my latest book, and it really will help you become more empowered it's so much easier. So if you're going to play a game of baseball, right? If you know what the rules are to baseball, you can go properly play the game. Imagine playing baseball for the first time. You've never played, you've never seen it. And someone says, okay, that guy on the mound's going to throw the ball to you and you got to hit the ball. And so you hit the ball and now everyone's going, run. So you run to third base. You're going to be out. So it makes sense to know what the rules of the game are. And the Desire Factor gives you that exact step-by-step rules to the game.
Okay.
And what I want to leave everybody with is that we are all energy. We're all able to master and manage our energy. We just need to learn processes and tools, and that's what we teach.
Great. And Christy, how do people get a hold of you if they'd love to chat with you?
Yeah, well, I'd love to send everybody to watchyourwords.com. It's a free 30-day program that'll help you get started, because words are powerful. Or you can go to christywhitman.com.
Perfect. Christy, thank you so much. This has been most exciting and instructive. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Deb. Appreciate you having me on.
You bet. Folks, thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a wonderful week and be happy.